Topping Talks.
Let's see it.
105 hours a week, can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies and ExpressVPN. Topping Talks is also on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all of your favorite providers. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder released twice today. Gotta say, he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me. That's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner and you need assistance, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, are you part of the 3.6% of Americans who still care about their privacy? If you are, then perfect. ExpressVPN can assist. Even though 96% of stats are made up on the spot, ExpressVPN does give a 100% guarantee via their 30-day back money guarantee. Now, without further ado, I'm proud to say today I'm interviewing the Global Partner Business Manager, Chad Short.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. It's
Absolutely.
good to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
No, it's all my pleasure. You know, I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller, and it's just good to be here. I love your setup. This is amazing, and congrats on where you've been so far.
Well, thanks. Much appreciated. Just like IT, you always want to buy quality, not quantity.
It is, yeah. I mean, you could get by, but just having good quality microphones makes it tolerable for the end user, right? So it's all worth it.
Oh, absolutely. And then winding back the clock a couple of years, how do you first get into IT, or when you were growing up, what was the first itch that kind of got you interested in the whole thing?
Yeah, I think it goes way back to early 80s. You know, I date myself a little bit, but I think it goes back to the first Atari 2600, right? So I think anytime I get my hands on a device that has some kind of electricity rolling through it, it's an amazing device to me, and I'm just, amazed at what it produces and what it does. So I think it started way back with a video game console in the 80s, right?
So what was your favorite game for the Atari 2600?
It's got to be probably Pitfall. You know,
classic.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, I always thought it'd be funner to just run backwards the entire time till the time ran out. So I always played it backwards. I don't know why. You know. So it was fun.
That game is a classic. I think my favorite was River Raid.
Yeah.
That was one of Activision's first. Now they're making Call of Duty 2959. I forget what version they're on.
And I was just reading today, Activision looks like they're going to go through with their acquisition with Microsoft. Right? So
I was going to say that. How many countries have had to sign off on that? The last road bump seemed to be the UK.
Yeah.
They're trying to decide, well, Microsoft's kind of a big company. Are we going to let them buy Activision, which is already big because they bought Blizzard back in the day?
Yeah, $60 billion or something like that. I think part of the deal is they have to let Ubisoft buy off some of their streaming properties or something like that to kind of get through that French hurdle. But yeah, anytime you get into a global acquisition where you've got to get multiple countries or unions involved to get a deal done, it's going to take a while anyway, but looks like it's going to go through, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to say another good day to be a Microsoft shareholder. I wish.
Oh, man, it's incredible. I kind of look back and, if you look at their current leadership, Satya, he's done an amazing job with Microsoft, Steve did a really good job for a long time, but I think he was maybe there a little bit longer than he should have been. Some of the acquisitions were probably a little bit late for what he did. The Nokia acquisition comes to mind, and some of those. But it's amazing the turnaround Satya's done with the current business, right? It's just amazing.
It's insane to think I could have bought it. A couple years ago, it was only $75 per share. Now it's what is it, triple, quadruple that?
Yeah, a lot. It's a lot, right? So yeah, it's amazing. It's the capabilities they have, and he's just got the right vision for where the company's going, right?
Right.
He doesn't just sit there on his laurels and take what comes to him. He goes out and he kind of invents the business, right? Which is what you really have to do as a good company. You got to go out and push the envelope, and you have to define things that people need before they understand that they need them, right? And I think that's where Apple did such an amazing job. Is like, hey, I didn't know I needed this phone that I could type on with no keyboard or anything like that. I didn't know I needed this until somebody told me I did, and now I can't live without it. Right? So.
Exactly. Got to know what they want before they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's key. He's doing a good job.
Then what was your first official role in IT growing up?
First official role. So kind of a backstory. I started at Daktronics while I was in college. So Daktronics is a really large scoreboard manufacturer. For those that aren't aware, they make a large quantity of the giant displays you see at football stadiums and stuff like that, and even a lot of the smaller signages you see around, like the ticker tapes that run around Times Square, or even little display boards on the side of the highway, right? They make all of those kind of electronic displays. So while I was working there going to college, one of my colleagues at the time, she's like, hey, my husband started working at Gateway Computers, right? You should go check him out. And I'm like, well, what the heck is this Gateway Computer thing, right? So I started looking into it, and, me being a broke college kid at the time, I had a chance to go from like, I don't know, $5.30 an hour to like $8, right?
Oh,
so
nice.
all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that's so much money. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of incredible. But so I checked it out, got hired there, and it really was the launch point for everything, right? I stayed there a total of about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So the first job I had there was just technical support. So if you could breathe and talk to people a little bit and knew a little bit about computers, right, they would hire you because they just needed bodies, in South Dakota at the time. It's not necessarily a technology hotspot, right?
Were you at the headquarters?
The headquarters was in North Sioux City. I was in Sioux Falls.
Oh, yeah.
So it was an hour away, so it was pretty close, but it was kind of their first or second. I forget if Kansas City was before them, but it was kind of one of their first, satellite facilities, and they had a lot of manufacturing or remanufacturing there, plus a huge call center, right? So they had sales and technical support. So I started in technical support for about 3 years. And then,
what products did you cover in that area?
Really just desktop PCs, right? Yeah. So I talked to everybody. I remember talking to the great grandson of a very large vacuum cleaning company.
Oh, way.
And he spent the first 5 minutes letting me know he wasn't stupid, in that he was very angry his printer wasn't working. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm not going to call you stupid, I promise, right? Let's just get this thing working, right? So, Gateway's tagline at the time was, you've got a friend in the business. So they encouraged us to take whatever time we needed to fix the customer, right? So the customer approval ratings were just through the roof at Gateway because there was no pressure to do anything that would just get the customers off the phone and on to go to the next one, right? So you just took care of the customers. So we'd often get handwritten letters or typed out letters from customers. They would literally mail them into us and saying, hey, he was such a great support person, thank you for doing this, right? That was regular there.
So were the metrics in one which where you didn't have to worry about a vast quantity of helping customers, is more the quality of,
absolutely.
Even if you only help 2 customers a day, you go above and beyond, so they never forget about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was it. And there'd be times you might have a 4 or 6 hour phone call with one person. Your shift is 8 hours. I might talk to 2 people some nights.
Wow,
right?
really?
It really depends what it was, and then
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. Of course, over time, bean counters start looking at things, and they start compressing your time frames and start encouraging that, which is fine, right? I think a lot of times you have a tendency to maybe talk a little bit too much if there's no pressure whatsoever, but no, it was a good experience. So 3 years there, and then at that time, kind of in the late 90s. Gateway acquired this company called ALR. It was Advanced Logic Research, which is a really up-and-coming server manufacturer. Right?
No way.
They were based out of Irvine, California. So they had a couple, two-way servers, but what they really had at the time was this really cool server. It was a Pentium Pro 6-way server, right? So it was like the first 6-socket server at the time.
Just for my parents at home, what's a server for the folks who aren't technically inclined?
Yeah, a server is something that you basically get data from. So the biggest example for an average user is anytime you go out and hit a website that sits on a server, right? So it's a somebody else's computer that gives you
there's
data.
No cloud.
Yeah, there is no cloud. It's just somebody else's computer and data center.
So Gateway was making those. I don't think anyone I know, when I talk to people about Gateway, they all know the infamous great marketing, the cow on the box, you got the print, but no one knew they had business grade like servers.
No, they didn't. And that's what was incredible. It was kind of an under the rug thing. And so when they acquired that company, Gateway created a thing called the Business Assistance Center. So they basically kind of plucked a lot of their better technical support people off the normal phones, and they actually ran them through a 6-week kind of crash course on MCSE certifications, right? So
what kind of certs are those for the folks at home?
Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. So it's basically, server management, IP configuration. I think one of them was Microsoft Proxy Server was one of the electives at the time. So it's actually a battery of 6 different tests at the time, right?
Oh, wow.
So it's quite a few. So I think what we did was we would learn for a week. At the end of the week, you go take that test, and then you'd keep going, right? So everybody that went into the Business Assistance Center actually became an MCSE by default, and that was really the launching point for the IT career, because you can work with computers but not necessarily be in IT.
Yeah.
But that really kind of kicked it off with everything. So we were MCSEs right out of the gate, supporting servers, which were kind of new to Gateway. And a lot of people ask, well, what happened to Gateway, right?
Yeah.
It's a common question you get. And
They were
if you think about
everywhere.
it, yeah. At the late 90s, the dot-com boom's happening. Gateway's growing hands over fist because they just can't literally make enough PCs fast enough because everybody in the country wanted one. At the time, it was a neck-and-neck race with Dell Computers. At one time, Gateway actually had a lot of people in Texas are going to hunt me down for saying this, but at one time, Gateway actually had a slightly higher valuation than Dell, which is kind of incredible. I think it was when they were both worth about $8 billion, $8.4 billion, somewhere in there in the late 90s, which is a pretty big company back then.
Especially from South Dakota, too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just kind of in a machine shed almost, right, in South Dakota. But anyway, so .com comes, it goes, it crashes. Gateway was highly focused on the consumer market. Dell smartly focused on the enterprise market. And away they went. And Gateway kind of, fluctuated around in there. They tried their hand. Gateway was a really, really innovative company, which I think a lot of people kind of overlook at the time. Late 90s, they invented a thing called the Gateway Destination, which was basically, it was a black cased PC you put in your entertainment system. It had a TV tuner video card in it, so you could plug cable into it. And then it came with a 31-inch monitor, like tube monitor, right? So that was a monster thing, but that was also black. So it kind of looked like your normal television set sitting on the counter. Unfortunately, it was a little bit before the internet, certainly before broadband really hit. So it's like, it's really hard to take full advantage of a media-based PC if you're using dial-up modems, right? So everything had to come on a CD or DVD. So it largely became just a TV device or maybe movie device, So they had some internet-based applications for it, but it wasn't really, it was a little bit too early, and then certainly that kind of transitioned into their next phase. And Gateway was one of the very first companies to launch plasma TVs, right?
Really?
Yeah. So some of the plasma TVs they had, they came out and they really made them affordable for people. A 42-inch plasma TV at the time was, I don't know, $2,000, something like that. So it was pretty reasonable. Wow. But I think some of the folks that were part of the product management team for Gateway that started that whole TV line that they had went off and joined or started Vizio. Right?
Oh, really cool.
So it's got an incredible story. So they were an incredibly innovative company. A lot of times they were a little bit soon to market, but it was almost too little, too late, right?
Yeah.
So they did move the headquarters from South Dakota to Irvine, California.
Yeah.
So that kind of created this weird rift in between the two facilities because you kind of had your traditional people that built Gateway from the ground, and then you pull in this different management style and technique. And there was a lot of internal clashing, I think, that goes kind of unrecognized a lot of times as culture differences in companies. That's a big deal. But, kind of towards the end, they technically, I think, officially acquired Acer, but at that time, they basically
reversed it,
pulled Acer in to manage this new company, and then they kind of went off to the sunset. So
really,
yeah. So it was a fun run. Yeah,
kind of like Sears and Kmart.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Everyone think, oh yeah, Sears bought Kmart. Nope. It was the other way around. But Sears had a better, bigger name, so they kept the Sears name and stayed in Illinois for now.
Yeah. So towards the end of that tenure there, I actually left for just a little bit. Worked for just a tiny little VAR in the local area, but I actually went back to Gateway for about another 4 years because another thing that was really kind of innovative at the time was Gateway opened their own country store. So probably a lot of people will remember these country stores where it was kind of like, a precursor to the Apple stores and the Microsoft stores. Gateway had these things in the early 2000s. I think they had, roughly 330 stores across the nation.
Really? Were they in malls or strip malls, or like where were they kind of strategically located? Because it was like a standalone store like by itself, or was it part of like a
Could be both.
Stores?
Could be both. It was definitely in more of an upscale area, right? Because a lot of times you're looking for people that can afford PCs for one, but it would, if it was in today's market, it would be next to Starbucks, that kind of thing. So, but the stores were cool because it had entire displays for everything they sold, which included all the media stuff. They had a couple training classrooms in there, so people that were new to computers, they could come in and learn and sit down for training or anything like that. And then they also had this little fishbowl thing. So what I did is I actually did installations for Country Store IT.
Oh, cool.
So they had their own small little IT department. They had a little ALR server.
Oh, there you go.
Couple network switches, Cisco router switches in there. So we had to set this thing up, and then there was a centralized management function for it. But they also had, a really big software distribution practice there, right? So
really?
basically anytime like a new application came out or a new operating system came out, we would have to develop that basically at the core, and then it would push out to all 330 stores. It would,
Really?
re-image PCs, all these things, right? So it was a really big practice and a lot of work to do that, because you think kind of late 90s, early 2000s, software distribution and management was still in its infancy a little bit. So, had to do a lot of creative things to get that done.
That's incredible. I think a lot of people forget how big Gateway was back in the day.
It was big. Yeah. There was over, I forget the number, over 10,000 employees, many locations. It was a big company, right, at one time. But, fortunes change quickly in IT, right? If you don't make the right strategic decisions, you can find yourself in a really bad position, within just a couple of years. And that's kind of what happened.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the cultures of the South Dakota and the California, because I watched a couple of those, fun little business documentaries on the internet, and every one that covers Gateway, that's one of the little pivot points they note when the company kind of started to shift, split a little bit, and becoming much more adversarial internally with all the politics and it kind of, a lot of people, like the consumers, also note like it just didn't feel as homey. It didn't feel like family, because I mean, every tech company in California, they're smart, they're highfalutin, Silicon Valley, but I mean, South Dakota, that's a very unique value proposition. It's more laid back.
Yeah, I mean, everybody came out of the, kind of out of the country, right? And I think with anything, what you get out of the Midwest is you get people that are incredibly dedicated, incredibly loyal, incredibly hardworking, right? But they might be lacking some of the, the business experience that, some of these other hotspots get. But it was an incredible experience. I remember Ted Waite, the founder, he would walk around it sometimes, and it was almost like seeing Jesus walk around. But it was an amazing place because, they just absolutely loved their employees. First and foremost, at least once a month they'd walk around and hand everybody a T-shirt, right?
Oh, really?
When I started, they had monthly profit sharing, and during Christmas times, they'd have like an extra Christmas fourth quarter bonus. And
nice.
What they did right is took care of their employees, right? And when you take care of your employees, the employees take care of your customers, right? And smart business leaders know that. The people that don't take care of their employees, their customer satisfaction ratings are usually an indicator of how well you're taking care of your employees. So that's something I learned really early is, that sticks with me today is just take care of the customer no matter what.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost sad. I read a lot of those business documentaries or the business biographies of the founders of these companies, like Home Depot, Starbucks, and I'm reading the one with HP about, Hewlett Packard. It's like the way they used to treat their employees. Then you talk to people, I'm not going to say which companies, but you talk to some of the companies now, it's like, oh yeah, no, it's not like that. And you can tell, and even the products, in my opinion, they're just not as good as when everyone's on the same page, they're happy, they're motivated, and they're all just on the same page of trying to make that dent in the universe, as cliche as it might sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what was it like from your role over after you left Gateway for the second time?
Yeah, so, Gateway was this amazing place, right? So it was an incredibly hard thing to leave Gateway, but you kind of know when it's time, right? Because, the company is struggling, I actually met my wife there.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it was.
That's awesome. What was that story?
It was, she hates when I tell this story, but she actually came over to our team as kind of a senior technical support person, and I was, just a normal tech support guy. So it was fun. I think anytime you can meet somebody that's in a more professional setting, you get to understand people first and foremost about who they are, right? Yeah. Which I think is really an advantage to when you meet somebody, right? Because if you meet somebody casually, you might get a different personality than when you meet somebody in person. So I spent a lot of time with her, just working with her, getting to know her as a person without having any type of expectation for what a side relationship could be, if that makes sense, right? So you get to know somebody as a person for a long time before you have to worry about being stressed out or anything like that about a relationship. So as difficult as it is sometimes, later on, if you're working with somebody that you're possibly dating, having that time to get to know somebody with no expectations is much more advantageous to me than trying to go to whatever the kids use nowadays.
All the apps. Yeah.
Yeah, the apps or something like that, right? Because you get to spend time with people, right? So that was a fun experience.
Then did you ask her out, or did she ask you, or who was the one who took that first step?
I don't know. We used to have these incredible rubber band wars.
Oh, really?
The way the cubicles were laid out, it was kind of like this big square. So you had cubicles around the edges and some in the middle. And I don't know how it started, but at some point, these rubber band wars would start. So you'd kind of duck below your cubicle. And I don't know if she shot me or I shot her, one of the two. I think that's how it started.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun. So we always joke about rubber band wars.
There's some of the things I kind of miss about the cliche cubicle corporate America. Yeah. There's some camaraderie there that people.
Oh, there is. Lifelong friends. You kind of get out of that place, and there's people you work with for many years.
Yeah.
Some of them I worked with 4, 5, 6, 8 years.
Oh wow.
They're lifelong friends, and they always will be because you get to spend that time with them. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of those cliche things to say, but the logo on someone's business card might change every couple of years, but the person doesn't.
No, they don't, and people are the same. To me, it's like once you kind of get into your late teens or early 20s, you're kind of that same person the rest of your life for most people. And, your skin gets a little older, your hair might get a little bit grayer and everything, but you're largely going to be the same person for a long, long time. And, once you find somebody that, you're compatible with from a friendship standpoint, that just stays, right? It doesn't go anywhere. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry to interrupt this. Yeah. My ADHD is sidetracked there, but then where did you go from Gateway? Because you kind of say you kind of had that gut feeling it's time to go. And
so we had a really good opportunity. There was a credit card company that actually started in South Dakota that built a call center. Again, more call centers in South Dakota, really just a half a mile away. So I was pretty fortunate that they needed a network administrator to kind of manage the site for them. So kind of through my Gateway connections, I was able to jump on board there and spend a couple of years there. And that was a really fun place to work. Another really great cultural company. So I had a lot of fun doing it, but it was really just kind of the on-site support IT staff for, a call center for, collections and credit and stuff like that. So.
What was the most challenging part of that role?
Had to wear a tie every day. Yeah, I mean it's a bank, so you get to wear a tie to work every day. But no, I don't think it was so much challenging as it was just kind of a lot of the same. The call center is there to serve a function, and it doesn't really change a whole lot. So if you're looking for something that changes, every day or every few months or something like that, that's probably not a great place to look for a lot of change. But I had a ton of experience there. Again, I got a lot more tied into the network side of things. Being a network administrator there, so it was a good fun time. Yeah.
And then what was it like going on to the next role, getting into absorbing not just the networking but the whole infrastructure?
Yeah. So that one was fun. So kind of a long story. When Gateway started to kind of roll down the other side of the hill, they actually it still kind of boggles my mind, but they actually outsourced their IT department to a company called ACS.
Really?
Affiliated Computer Services, yeah. So ACS was based in Dallas. So, just to kind of make the story a little more compact, the reason I'm in Dallas is kind of through that nature. I had a friend that when the outsourcing happened, he moved down here to Dallas. I happened to roll through here one day, just on a whim, because we just decided we wanted to go see an ocean one day. Galveston's the closest ocean you can get to in South Dakota. So we rolled through Dallas. I saw an ACS building, kind of in the corner of 35 there, and I just happened to email him saying, "Hey, just checking in, see how you're doing." I hadn't talked to him in a while. Just checking to see if you're still there. And he's like, "Yeah, we are." He's like, "We're hiring. Do you need a job?"
Nice.
Right. So it's like, oh, that's kind of quick, but
Perfect.
let's talk. Right. So I think, like the next Monday or something, we had a quick chat. He put me in touch with the hiring manager, and he's like, "Hey, this was like on a Friday." He called me. He's like, "Can you start Monday in Dallas?" And I'm like, that's a long ways to start on a Monday from South Dakota. So give me a little bit of time. I called my wife and I'm like, "Do you want to move to Dallas?" And she started crying and I'm like, "Why are you crying?" She's like, "I have no idea." But she kind of grew up. Her dad was in military avionics and worked for Honeywell. So
no way.
She traveled a lot and moved around a lot. So she spent her kind of elementary years in Oklahoma City, so the South was kind of home to her.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's why she got a little bit emotional, but we decided to make the move, and 2 weeks later we moved and started down at ACS Xerox, outsourcer.
That's the place to be. What was it like having the whole infrastructure under your belt? And it sounds like you guys worked with a lot of fast food restaurants headquartered maybe in Chicago.
Yeah. There's a lot of companies that were there. Yeah, there's a lot of places that love golden arches, or they like wearing crowns. Those kind of companies.
Yeah, Canadian.
So
kings.
they had a lot of amazing brands. So I think to me, from a true data center experience standpoint, that place was amazing to kind of learn from, because you get to not only see that services side of how you do IT business, but at the same point you get it exposed to a ton of really large corporate infrastructures, right? And some of them used ACS Xerox for a managed service where they might all buy into maybe a big storage array or something like that, or that you might manage their IT infrastructure holistically up to themselves, right?
Really?
So so some of them we managed their infrastructure for them, and they basically paid us to manage it, or they would subscribe to the shared services, were ultimately cheaper because you're getting economies of scale to do so, right? But just a ton of experience there, right? You really understand what situation management is and IT processes, and I think one of the things that sticks with me most about that role is doing disaster recovery tests, right? So ACS was a big partner of SunGard at the time, right? So just about every single customer that had services through them would do a DR test about once a year, right? So you generally have 24, 48 hours to go prove that you're protecting their information, and you can do it in 48 hours, right? So, a lot of times what it took is you'd go pull a list of catalog tapes from your backup system. You'd ship them off to SunGard, and at like 0800, you're gonna start doing this, right? So you recover the operating systems, you recover the backup, recover the catalog, and then just start restoring data, right? And you go from there. And those were always challenging, simply because tape backups at the time, even though they're pretty fast, they're still not ultra fast, right? So if you've got a 24-hour restore that is going to take 24 hours, but it's a 48-hour test, anything breaks, right? It gets in a world of hurt in a hurry, especially if you have to restart a restore. But a lot of times it's just configuration management. But there's many times where you'd get down to the the 23rd and a half hour, and you've got 28 minutes of work to do, and you've got 30 minutes to get it done, right? So a lot of pressure to get those done. There's many times I stayed up for well over 28 hours, 30 hours, 32 hours.
Oh my gosh, really?
Doing a test.
This is before Red Bull and Monster. How do you do that?
It was a lot of, kind of keeping one eye open, trying not to fall asleep. But a little bit of coffee, a little caffeine to keep it going. We did have a follow the sun model. So, it was, generally pretty good that we could do handoffs well. But when, comes coconut cutting time, it's all hands on deck to get things done, right?
I was going to say, it's also important. It's astonishing how many folks, they think they have good backups. Like the first thing I ask them, it's like, when was the last time you tested the backup? And their faces sometimes just go white. It's like, well, we try to, or we want to. It's like, hope for the best, pray, what was it? Hope for the best, or prepare for the worst kind of thing. It's like, let's see. Well, let's try it out. Let's see how does it goes. Yeah.
You definitely need to test it. And, it's one thing to make sure your backups are doing, but you have to test it, not just to make sure that you can actually read the data, but you really need to understand the timing of that restore too, right? Because, if you've got an older system and a lot of data, many gigabytes to petabytes or terabytes, if that takes 96 hours, is it an actual valuable asset to the company?
Yeah.
Right? Because, how much can you afford to take down in any amount of time? And if my systems are down for a week because my backups are so incredibly slow, what do I do with that? Is that actually business continuity at that point, right? So, some companies, if they're not able to use their IT systems for a week, that could be pretty devastating, right?
Oh yeah. Just ask MGM maybe.
Wow, yeah. That's a whole nother topic, right?
Right? Oh my gosh. Oh, there's a report. What was it? Was it Caesars? One of the two, where they were shut down because of the ransomware. They actually just resulted to using cash and analog technology.
Isn't that amazing?
So the casino was technically open, but it's all cash,
You bring your credit card, and they're doing the old.
Oh yeah, the click. I got one in the kitchen. Yeah, that's one of the most random things I got from an IT recycle project. I'm like, can you take that? It's like, sure, why not? It's metal. I could recycle it.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you get nervous because somebody has a piece of paper with your credit card information on it,
exactly.
Right? To kind of take it for granted now that you don't actually have to leave a copy of it anywhere.
Right? I was going to say, it's...
Yeah.
More companies really need to know what's the true cost of downtime and then to restore. Because, again, backup might be expensive, but if it's all flash and gets you back up online in a New York minute, if you're generating your $1 billion company, your casino, probably makes sense. But
yeah, and I think that's at the end of the day what everybody needs to focus on is the recovery efforts. And I know I think that's gotten enough airtime lately from companies to understand that, but it's something you really need to go through and define and understand what your recovery looks like. Just kind of conceptually, and then the technology you have, does it actually make sense for what you're doing? Right? Don't just we'll kind of talk about my most recent company at some point, but you really have to kind of have a conversation that says, don't just say your backups are working, right? What does your recovery story look like? Let's just talk about it, right? Because if it takes you 2 days to get that done, what does that do for your business?
Exactly. How much are you paying your employees per hour again? And how many employees is that? What's that multiply to? It's like, and then how unhappy your customers or your end users be, your customers?
Well, and it's a lot of times, especially if it's ransomware, it's a reputation thing, right? All of a sudden, people are going to be like, man, maybe I don't want to go to MGM, or maybe I don't want to go to XYZ company because they've been exposed, they've been breached. Maybe that starts creating these little things in my head that say, maybe they're not doing what they can do to protect my information or my data as a customer, right? So that goes through people's heads a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I remember a couple years back, Target got hacked, and a lot of consumers, they ended up going to cash. And for retail, that's the worst thing on the planet because psychologically, Americans, every single time, every study will always show if you're spending cash as opposed to a credit card, you will spend less money because you feel it and it's real to you. Ironically, it's not really real because it's fiat cash and money, but don't get me wrong, it's a fascinating psychology thing, but the brand, the Target was just tarnished so much, people stopped shopping there and they stopped using credit cards for a while. Yeah. And that cost them, a couple billion, I believe.
Oh, easily. A company that size, right? I can't imagine how many dollars in transactions every hour that happen at a company like Walmart or Target or anybody like that. It's an incredible amount.
Oh, and it never stops because all of them now have bolstered e-commerce platforms as well, too.
Yeah, especially Walmart. They're really trying to challenge Amazon, and they're doing a pretty good job of that. So time is money for sure.
Absolutely. That was probably one of the best acquisitions that I've seen in IT lately, past 10 years, is when they bought Jet.com, which tried to beat Amazon for a little while, and they grew pretty quick. Then Walmart bought them and brought them into the Walmart e-commerce platform. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see who wins the race at the end of the day. But they're finally starting to catch up where people used to joke about, do you buy something at Walmart.com? It's like, no, we got Amazon. It's like, it's caught up pretty good. So it'll be interesting to see who wins the final race.
Yeah, and I think what people don't realize that Amazon did the best is they really solved logistics, right? More than anything. And, you can always get things sometimes, a couple hours later, if they know the truck's going to be out that way, they've got all that data they can leverage. And, just recently, a couple times, it's like, I'll order something in the evening. It's like, you want us to drop this off while you sleep, that kind of thing. It'll be here at 3 a.m. When you wake up, you open your door and there it is. Like, that's incredible.
And I was going to say, FedEx and UPS should be scared to death because, of course, Amazon's building out their whole logistics program. Yeah. It'll eventually, depending on how big the company gets, it might just be a whole separate new entity too.
It could be. Yeah, absolutely. It's big enough. I've kind of been wondering, at what point do they spin AWS out,
never.
Company, but they won't. It's too easy. But
it helps offset all the break-evens or the losses they might be having. It's too convenient. AWS, it's one of the best solutions out there. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was the same thing with EMC and VMware. It's VMware's the crown jewel of the platform, and that's half the reason EMC acquired them, or Dell acquired EMC.
I was going to say, speaking of perfect transition, what was your next role after that?
So I spent about 4 years at ACS, learned a ton. They were kind of dog years. I really equate it to about 8 years of experience because when you work, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, you learn a lot. From there, at the time I was managing TSM or net backup teams, and data domain hit the street at the time, right? And it's like, well, what is this new thing? It's a virtual tape library, back-ended by disk drives, right? Well, this thing's cool. What does it do? Like, well, I've got an LTO 4 or 5 tape drive. I can back up a couple gigabytes a second. This little data domain thing maybe does 100 megabytes a second. this is hard for me to use, but it doesn't break, right? It's easy to set up. Instant restores. The restores are way faster. I don't have to worry about running to, SunGuard or somewhere else to grab a tape. It's instantaneously. I just need this thing to scale. Well, that's kind of easy to do, right? You just get bigger CPUs and you build more things into it. And, before too long, you have this thing that's really, really viable. So that thing really kind of hit my radar as some kind of breakthrough technology that kind of hit the, the street at the right time. So from there, I got really interested in data domain. I actually wanted to join data domain, didn't quite work out. And at the same time, right about that time, EMC acquired data domain, right? So shortly thereafter, I joined EMC primarily with trying to work on data domain products. So I started as an implementation engineer, mostly did data domain products, but I kind of branched off and did most of the data protection family. So Avamar Networker, Data Protection Advisor, which was Wisdom software before that. So I really kind of did most of the data protection family, and then kind of what my end goal was to become a pre-sales SE. So that's where I kind of moved to after a couple of years there. Ironically enough, I became an SE for ACS Xerox, right? So I kind of got to go talk to my old colleagues there about EMC solutions, and data domain, and everything else. So.
What was the culture like at EMC? I've heard all the fascinating stories because it used to be like it was a pinnacle of storage. You talk storage, it was them or nothing.
Yeah, it really was, and it was kind of an incredible culture. It was. I hate to use the term like win at all costs, but they were there to win, right? They were there to win business. They were going to win every single deal. Everybody was a competitor, no matter how big or small you were, right? We are here to win the deal, and they did an amazing job of doing that. I think part of it too is they had the right products to do it, right? They did have industry-leading products, and it was pretty incredible culture. Really, again, learned a lot about the sales process, more than anything. So when you understand technology, that's one thing, but understanding how the technology is acquired, that's another skill set to learn. And I think I learned a ton there. I had a really great rep that I worked with there. I miss working with him every day to this day. We still keep in touch, of course, but it was a great time. Yeah.
Kind of work hard, play hard mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely worked hard, but you're rewarded well too. At a company like that, so they did a pretty good job taking care of their employees too.
Absolutely. I remember, so back in the day when I kind of thought I'd love to have a career in corporate America, one of my mentors told me, always be interviewing. So when I was in HPE inside sales, I'd do 7 to 12 interviews a week at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And I remember I did one towards the end for EMC. And I got to the point where I went all the way down to Round Rock, and I met one of the legacy EMC reps. So she was a really great leader. And I did a whole whiteboard. At the time, HPE had acquired 3PAR, and I knew it pretty well. And I was actually interviewing for a sales role, but I had a little bit of technical acumen. So I did a nice whiteboard presentation talking about how scalable a 3PAR is, kind of show I had some storage experience. And the interview was going great. I'll never forget, Amy asked me the most unusual question. And it was the one time in my interview career, because I've done it for years, I could ace them pretty good. It was one time where I was dumbfounded. She looks at me, she goes, what do you in the Aruba team, what do you like to do for fun? Mm-hmm. And I just felt like ice water just splash all over my body, because I was like, I don't have an answer for this. And I've never been asked this question before. And I don't lie. So it was like almost as long and as awkward as that pregnant pause was right there. It was just like that, only maybe 12 seconds longer. And I eventually just said, oh yeah, we meet about once a year for QBRs. Like we'll meet as a team at a restaurant. But like that was the most unusual question. And then, she was extremely kind of professional. She kind of gave me examples of how her and her team will go on these, fun activities once a month, really team building experiences. And I just thought, I was like, I never did that at HPE. And then when I got prone to, field sales at Aruba Networks, I'm like, I never did that. And she's like, yeah, if we're not just, working together, we're, work family. We want to win. And she told me about all that great winning culture, but she says, like, at the end of the day, we also want to be a team too. Yeah. And that really stuck with me when I'm trying to build out my team, and I'm trying to think of, how could I give everyone the best experiences in life, not just with technical acumen and providing great solutions and experiences, but how can really have fun together as well.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. I mean, you spend so much time with your colleagues. Like you have to figure out how to just have that personal experience, right? Understand you working with people, right? They're not machines, they're people. How do you get along with people? And even find time to kind of relax with those people, right? And like we mentioned at the start is, I still have friends from Gateway many, many years later. And you don't get that if you don't take time to actually just get to know people and have fun with them. So
Exactly. And so one of the best pieces of advice I ever got growing up was wherever you're working, always be polite, professional to everyone, because time is half of everything in life. Someday they're going to want to call in a favor to you or vice versa, because especially whether it's insurance, automotive, or technology, they're big industries, and more often than not, people kind of tend to stick in the same industry.
Yeah.
And then you're able to call in a favor and be like, hey, could you get me an interview at this other company? So
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible, and technology really kind of transcends time. Technology is just the tool you're currently using to accomplish a goal.
Exactly.
So the technology is going to change. The companies are going to change. Especially in tech, right? There's a lot of turnover. Good, bad, or indifferent, just because that's how it is, right? People are always gravitating towards new technologies, and it's so incredibly rare for people to stay at a company for many, many years over time, because frankly, there's quite a bit of incentive not to, right? Because
unfortunately, I blame human resources for the record, because that is an issue. Because I've had same conversations because if you know your manager, you'll have a frank conversation about career progression, industry trends, and sometime you'll say, hey, by industry trends, I'm underpaid by 18% based on my metrics, based on where I'm in my career, based on how much revenue I'm achieving for the business. And they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you, like my manager was telling me, like, oh yeah, human resources will only allocate a certain percentage we're allowed to.
Yep.
However, if you go work for the competition for 12 months, I could hire you at whatever price point I basically want.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's why you see it.
Yeah, and you do, and everybody knows it, right? It's no secret, and I think the great thing about it is people. I think a lot of people would like to stay at companies longer if they offered pensions and those kind of things, but at the same point,
what are those? I'm kidding.
Well, and that's the point. Is like you can take this company that has a pension, but your salary compared to maybe a tech company is going to be half.
Yeah.
So you just take it and invest it yourself, and away you go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the difference, is as long as you're smart with your money and plan accordingly, it's the same, if not better, than maybe a place with a pension. So.
That's another topic for another. I was just going to say, I'm trying to think. I know one company in Texas, anecdotally, just from prospecting and researching. I know one company in the private sector who still has pensions.
Yeah.
It's gotten that rare.
Yeah, it's really rare, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a common thing too. Is I think our generation, I'm grouping myself with you to take on your youth energy
I'll
here.
take it.
But I think a lot of, like my parents' age, a lot of times they stayed at companies for so long because so many of them had really good retirement plans, right?
True.
And they don't quite understand that people don't stay at companies anymore, and they don't understand why you would change companies every few years. But it's like there's again no incentive to, right?
Yeah.
There's no reward to stay at a company. There's generally only penalties.
True.
Other than making sure you're not doing it so frequently you're damaging yourself, right?
Right.
To me it's like you should stay in a role. Generally 18 to 24 months is a good time, maybe a little bit longer depending on what you're doing, and as long as you're challenged and the role's good enough, right? You can kind of keep going there, but I kind of get that itch every couple of years to kind of keep moving along, and I've got a background that kind of shows it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those sad things where even my dad, I kind of saw I saw I wasn't alive, but I studied business. There's kind of that pivot where you start to jump around a little bit, but like I know my grandpa was at the same aluminum foundry working in the 7 days a week for years over in Michigan. Mm-hmm. And he did have a kind of cliche classic retirement where at the end he did have a pension, and he did have they gave him a nice golden clock display piece.
Yeah.
And they used to be kind of a staple of Americana. You get a nice golden watch at your end of your tenure, and it was sustainable. But I think if I were to, it's another topic for another time, but to summarize my guess, I would think it's because there's so many variables. Businesses move so quick.
Yeah.
It's hard for a business to even stand still these days. Like look at technology.
Yeah.
You can't go a day without a new startup hitting the streets.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the pace of business is different too, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you think back to I like to think back to these pictures of Boeing when they're building airplanes in the 50s, and they've got these tables, this big, they're drafting on and trying to do things, and it's the pace of business is so much different now with computers and email and, Zoom where you can get on
yeah.
a phone and do that, right? You don't have to fly out to meet somebody to get something, resolved, so the pace of business is just different.
And it never stops either.
No,
I mean, now it's a
no.
global economy for pretty much every industry. I can't think of a single industry where it's not a global economy.
No, and it's going to continue to accelerate with the adoption of different types of AI, starting to come into business, where, I used to do a little bit of moonlighting as like a PHP developer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I used to build these things.
What kind of stuff were you building?
Yeah, so I built this, I call it a tick-based game in the early 2000s. When I was first learning PHP, there was this game called Kings of Chaos, if anybody's ever heard of it. It was basically like you get these 4 factions like orcs and elves and wizards or whatever, but you're not really allocated resources, you're allocated time. Right.
Oh, really?
So in order to keep a level playing field, everybody gets allocated the same amount of time, and what you choose to do with those ticks of time is up to you. So I built this little game. I called it World Conquest. It was kind of based on the Command and Conquer series, so like tanks and planes and all these things, but it was the same concept where you get allocated ticks of time. You get to build whatever you want with it. So that's what I did with it. But that was a really fun time and game experience. I wish I would have been in the Facebook era. It was right before it, to get that social connection to it. You never know what would have happened, but I forget what the question was.
My ADHD is terrible. Don't worry.
No, I went off on a tangent there for a minute. No, it was a lot of fun, but kind of going through that programming phase, I learned a ton, and that was a good time.
And what inspired you? Because I know, kind of get that itch again. What inspired you to leave EMC onto your next role?
Yeah, so at the time, when I was in the data protection team, they really wanted us to focus on a secondary technology, right? So kind of get that secondary skill set to kind of help the team and just kind of expand your own, sphere of influence, if you will. So we started learning about Extreme IO at the time because it was a new acquisition to EMC, and I remember a lot of the presentations. A lot of the focus was on this company called Pure Storage, right? Yeah. You don't want to go with Pure because XYZ thing, and all of a sudden, why do we spend so much time talking about Pure internally when I should be learning about Extreme IO, right? So started looking at that at the time. Pure started hiring a lot of people from EMC. So I ended up over there as a pre-sales SC not too long after that.
What was the interview process like, or did anything stick out? And then what was the culture like when you first joined?
Incredible culture at Pure, right? So if you kind of think about the color orange, if you look at a color wheel, blue is here, orange is here, right? So it's like everything we can do opposite of EMC, we're going to do.
I like it.
So that was the mentality of Pure, right? So they kind of literally declared war on EMC and said, we're going to take down the VMAX and go from there. And it was an incredible company. It was a great experience. The pace was very different, right? Because you're just rapid firing at everything. And, Pure is a much different company than them culturally, but also just about how they do their business. A lot of times it's like, we just want to talk to a lot of people. It's okay if you don't buy from us. We're not going to put a ton of pressure on you. We'll just keep moving because at the end of the day, I kind of feel like you'll come back to us at some point, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the thing they coined was, kind of this maintenance extortion concept where instead of, having to renew maintenance every 3 years, it's like, we're just going to give you free controllers with a maintenance renewal, right? We're not forcing you into anything. So anyway, there's a whole story.
That was the biggest curveball when I was starting to learn about Pure Storage. I'm like, explain this to me again. I don't understand. This just sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Because it was a revolutionary concept when they first introduced it, especially for the storage community.
Yeah, it really was. And, I think a lot of people questioned, and maybe even some people internally questioned whether or not it was sustainable. But if you kind of think about legacy technology, and especially stuff that starts aging, right, the gear that's older causes more support calls. So it's actually advantageous for a company to get that older gear swapped out because it stays current. The likelihood of failures to occur is less, right? So the support and maintenance contracts actually get a little bit simpler the longer you have it, just because you're not sitting on 5-7-year-old equipment trying to support stuff that's starting to break down. Right?
And just the stress levels of having something that it's funny, depending on like what we're talking about, 7 years is, really old, or, with IT, that's basically ancient.
Yeah, it's starting to get there. Anytime,
it's like, is it going to break tomorrow? It's like, can I take vacation?
I know there's still a Windows NT floating around in some data centers out there, but that's the machine you don't dare touch or look at, right? Because you're worried about it breaking. But No, it was an incredible experience. I absolutely loved it. I spent 4 years in pre-sales. I did some SLED, some healthcare stuff there. So I really love working with both those entities. Again, learned a ton. And then from there, I actually rolled in. I actually take a step back. Every single dime that goes through Pure actually goes through a partner. So they don't do any business without a partner, which is incredible, right? Because then the partners don't feel threatened, right?
Yep.
I'm not going to pull the rug out from under you and take a deal direct, right? So that's kind of the thing, that I think partners really like about working with Pure. But
that's a big value add, not to cut you off, because there are certain manufacturers where they'll brag like, oh yeah, we're 80% channel. I'm like, okay, that's 20% of hesitation throughout the partner community where they're worried because that's their livelihood, that's their customer. I mean, that doesn't help them sleep at night.
Yeah, it does, and right, and there's a ton of benefits, that Pure does, and they understand that channel community is just a huge partner, a huge part of their business, and that's still not lost on them over 12, 13 years later.
Yeah.
So through that process, I started working with partners. That's how we met, right?
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, it's been a while, pre-COVID. But yeah, we started, working with partners. I found the partner community, something that I hadn't really worked with a ton in the past. It was just really an eye-opening experience to me because it's like what I really understood to like was that I really like working with partners because they generally like working with us, right? And I think that's what I gravitated towards, and I became this thing called a partner technical manager, right? So I kind of had purview from like Texas to Carolinas to Florida, covering the Southeast, kind of some of the mid-market partners was that. And then I kind of flipped and covered a couple national partners, right? But the focus was basically maximizing partner potential, right? At the end of the day. So that's what my focus was. And then from there, kind of elevated into this director of global enablement role, right?
Oh, wow.
So, kind of what I was seeing personally was, I wanted to host maybe a webinar on, let's just say, a flash array or something like that. And I'm like, well, is there a global thing doing this? And there really wasn't, right? They were kind of in between some roles at Pure. And what I really wanted to do is take some of the cool things we were doing in the region and just elevate them to a global level, right? So that's kind of why I moved into that role. So.
And I was going to say, so going from handling, most of the United States, going to the global level, what was that like?
It's a lot of again, you're always learning because I don't think you really appreciate the cultural differences from a technological aspect of how people consume technology across the globe. Working with like the Japanese market, just as an example, it's they don't. You kind of think of Japan as being really progressive from a language standpoint, but they're actually only like 20% English speaking there.
Oh, really?
Right? It's a pretty low number, if that. And then if you take even that English number and translate into that being a business relevant English topic, it's even less, right? So, it's very rare to find a ton of English speaking business native people, right, that could take the technology and run with it. So you run into a lot of translation service capabilities that you really have to kind of build out. A lot of times, the other thing we take for granted in kind of working environments is how you actually get documents that are created in native English, get those translated into, native whatever, Japanese, Korean, whatever it is. That's a big, heavy lift, and it's expensive. One document might cost you tens of thousands of dollars to translate because it has to. Yeah, it's not, you can't just cut and paste from Google. Otherwise, it looks like it's cut and pasted from Google, right? So to create a professionally created document, it's expensive, right? And a lot of times, companies that are smaller, and Pure's no exception, is a lot of times you have to leverage your local resources to kind of help you be your translators. And there's just a lot of things you learn that you really don't think of when we sit here in our U.S. bubble and think about the challenges, and on top of it, and I think about our Japanese market again. It's like these guys really like to have a lot of really deep technical information. Like, I need to understand every bit that goes through that thing, right? Yeah. It goes through your box. Where over here, we'll check the specifications of a box. We might validate it. We might do a POC, and then we're good. Right. Over there, they're like, no, I need to understand everything. Right. So the level of documentation usually is much more and deeper. Right. So you just learn all these different nuances, and things we take for granted. Is a lot of the English slang we use here. A lot of times you got to pull that back, right? Because not only do they not understand it overseas, but something could be offensive to them, right, culturally. So those are just things you learn on it, but you absolutely have to leverage, your local in-country, in-theater people to help you navigate that space.
Absolutely. Another good example of, why can't you just use software to translate? It's like, well, you could, but you might look like an ass because some words are appropriate, even just in the United States. Some words in Texas are appropriate, aren't in Los Angeles. I mean, even in the United States, there's differences in language and appropriateness and business acumen. Going all the way to another country, I can't imagine the stress of making sure. I mean, this is a white sheet for the new storage array, but one or two words might be incredibly offensive. How do we translate that and make sure everyone's happy and on the same page?
Well, and if you think about it, all of the terminology, right, that gets used in technical documentation, there's kind of not a translated word for that in a lot of cases, especially if it's newer technology. A lot of times that just transfers right across as how it's printed. You'll hear, a native thing, and then you'll hear a word, and then it's back to native language, right? So it's not as easy as just, leveraging software to translate, because there's so many technical details involved with documentation that it's just almost impossible.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I can't imagine. It'll be interesting to see if, like, as cultures keep advancing, if there may be a universal language someday.
You kind of think that. I've often wondered that too. That at some point, it's probably 1,000 years in the future, but there kind of has to be this unifying language. And right now, English feels as close to that as it can be, just because most of business is done in English. But you think about the number of people that speak Spanish, right? Hundreds of millions. If you think about the people that speak Hindi or Mandarin or anything like that, billion.
Literally billions, yeah.
So it at some point you think there has to be a unifying language, but at the same point, for me to go learn something like Hindi, it's hard, right? It's a hard language to learn from an English native speaker, and it's kind of vice versa. The languages are just fundamentally different versus, things that are like sister languages where we come from. I come from a European descent, right? I think my skin color gives it away.
Yeah.
But from that perspective, a lot of times you can kind of see the words, right? Because they're close. They're close enough to understand it, and the formats are similar. But when you switch to something that's completely different, you literally have to learn a completely different, nuanced way to speak a language, which just seems incredible when you think about it.
Absolutely. It's something I wish they push more in public schools, but it'll be interesting to see if they start to encourage that more, to take a couple different languages too. Yeah.
And I think, even in the U.S., we're kind of, I think a little bit language resistant, understanding, like, if your goal is to be a global business executive, you have to pick something up, right? And whether it's like a Hindi or, one of the Chinese languages, something like that, in order to be effective, especially if you plan to travel to Asia, you kind of need to learn something. My brother-in-law, he's worked for furniture companies for a long time, but he travels to Asia probably once a quarter, and he spent a lot of time in China. He learned quite a bit of Chinese. Now he spends a lot of time in Vietnam, so he's learning Vietnamese.
Cool.
Right? But in order for him to really be effective and kind of, integrate with their cultures, right, in order to have good business relationships, that's something he's had to pick up, right? And, he's been fortunate enough to take his kids with him on trips a couple times, so they kind of get involved with the different languages there. But, I think we have to be making sure that we're not just being selfish and saying English is the language, we're going to use this, but understanding what your goals are personally, it's probably imperative that you think about another language. Yeah,
absolutely. Especially nowadays, global economy. I mean, everything around us darn near has a global component to it.
Everything.
I mean, even these microphones. I mean, Shure has been headquartered in, I believe, a suburb of Chicago for over 80, 90 years, but nowadays they're made in Mexico. So, I mean, and then you have their even the little instructional manuals in, 4 to 5 different languages. I mean, and then the components come from all over the globe, I would guess, as well. So
absolutely.
Even something as simple as this, there's a global components to it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, but at some point, you kind of think there doesn't need to be a unifying language, just so everybody's has the same access to resources, even, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what do you like to do outside the office these days?
We do a lot of things. We just got back. My wife and I had a 25th anniversary.
Congrats.
So we're officially, old, because they call it silver, right?
There you go.
So we took a trip to Niagara Falls. So we do like to travel a lot. COVID kind of slowed things down, but we we're for game. You know, we like to go to Florida or California, Niagara Falls. You know, we're fortunate to go to Caribbean cruise and different things, right? So we like to travel. You know, it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we love to do that. You know, I love little hobbies. I'm pretty nerdy, so I kind of rotate through hobbies like 3D printing.
Oh, cool. What kind of stuff?
So I'll bring you a little present, but
thanks,
even
man.
a simple thing like this, it's just like a fidget spinner, but it's basically a print-in-place gear that you can just
That's incredible. Thanks,
play
man.
with. Yeah. So
That's brilliant.
it's fun. I love doing it.
Yeah.
You know, my wife just got me another 3D printer. Now that I have 4, I don't know that I need 4.
Wow.
They're fun. You know, my father-in-law, he's kind of building a Jeep. You know, he bought these little LED lights for it.
Yeah.
He's like, they don't quite fit quite right. Can you make me a bracket for it? And
Yeah.
Sure enough, he sent me the light. I printed a little, you know, kind of designed and printed a bracket around it so it fits on the Jeep better. And, you know, it's just fascinating to me. I've had one for over 5 years, and today I'll still sit and watch it print, even though I've printed hundreds of objects, right? You know, because it's just like this thing makes things out of thin air. You know?
It's one of the most revolutionary technologies in our lifetime. I mean, do you have any? And now it's getting to more and more different types of materials. Like now, I mean, it used to be, and it still is, probably about 190,000 for a metal printer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but the price point keeps getting lower and lower, just like with the plastics too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, most things are plastics because it's the easiest thing to print with. But you know, I've even got a filament that's made out of wood fibers. You know, it's literally wood. So I've printed a couple things out of that. But yeah, the applications are getting better. The printers are getting better and faster all the time and cheaper. You know, because today printing isn't super easy to do, but it's better than it was even 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
Just the way they go. But yeah, they're revolutionary. You know, I think back to my Daktronics days. I remember kind of working with an engineer there at one time. You know, they used to have this thing called a glow cube, and it was basically literally a plastic cube. It had a fluorescent yellow front on it. Mm-hmm. And to build a display, it would just flip the cube over, right? Yeah. So, you know, instead of flipping like digits on it, it would just flip the cube over to black or yellow. Mm-hmm. And they were working on a new concept at the time. Instead of flipping an entire cube, they were just going to flip a face.
Yeah.
Right. So it just had this electromagnetic component to it. You know, it'd repel the magnet or suck the magnet in. Right. It was simple as that. So anyway, they were working on the concept for this thing, and I remember him telling me like, "Hey, we just designed the plastic component for one of our tests. Going to ship it off to the manufacturer. You know, it'll take a couple days. We'll get a piece back in 4 days." And you know, I think about today, it's like, what if we took that thing and you're able to just 3D print your part in 2 hours, you know, instead of taking 4 days? You know, the manufacturing aspects of 3D printing is incredible. You know, I can't imagine, you know, if you're in like a designing a role where you design a lot of components, especially if they can be fabricated out of plastic, even at a design level, you know, the implications of having something that only costs you $1,000 to prototype and reiterate over quickly is just incredible.
I mean, it lets so many people get into businesses because the cost to barrier to get in, it just drops so much. Just like media production too. Usually you have to spend a fortune to have a building, you have to have the best equipment on the planet, and the price point, like now, thanks to technology, just gets so low, everyone can join in, or darn near everyone.
Well, and I know a couple times this last year, Micro Center actually ran a special. If you became like a part of their club or membership or whatever, they'd basically give you like $200 off this Ender 3 printer. It made it $100.
Oh, cool. Really?
Like $100 Ender 3, which is a decent printer.
Yeah.
Certainly for $100, it's very decent. So, you know, the barrier to entry is just really minimal, and a lot of times
it's so revolutionary for all the manufacturers too. I remember it was Silence Co, headquartered out of Utah. Mm-hmm. They were one of the first suppressor companies to make a suppressor completely 3D printed out of metal end canal.
Oh, wow.
So imagine going from welding those baffles with all the errors that could come with welding inherently just because of what it is.
Yeah.
Now it's just printed from the ground up. And I know all the like Lockheed, Boeing, all the defense industries for the aerospace, now they're using the 3D metal printers for all the aircraft components.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how it, you know, just cuts the time of production into a fraction of what it used to be to make a traditional metal mold. I mean, the economies of scale is just huge.
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, and you think about it, it's like the metal fabrication or the metal printing is really kind of where the future of that is going to go, at least from a a business standpoint, because it's like, you know, I kind of chuckle because a lot of times you kind of hear these horror stories on the internet are like, people are just 3D printing guns at home. You know, it's like, there is no way I'm going to 3D print a gun out of what the materials I have access to and shoot it.
Well, it's also that misconception too. It's like kind of like when Glock first hit the market and Mr. Gustav Glock in Austria brought it, all the news agencies were saying, oh yeah, it's polymer, it'll get past metal detectors. It's like the barrel and the slide are all metal because inherently that's where the pressure of the bullet is when it expands.
Yeah.
It's like right now, that's what I love about technology. It moves so quick, but with the current technology, you have the 3D printing, you're printing the lower, just like whether it's the rifle lower or the pistol lower, it's the grip. So there's no explosives happening there. Right. The bullet's not coming out there. It's basically just the carrier for the device. So that's why it can be a weaker material than metal. But even in the past 5 years, it used to be, you know, they'd have it. If you ever seen the prototype with the AR-15, after a couple of shots, the end of it would just crack off.
Yeah.
Because the polymers at the time weren't that advanced.
Yeah.
But every year they get better and better and better.
Yeah,
and
they do.
I think within our lifetime, we will see, you know, knock on wood, I think you'll see 3D printed barrels.
Probably,
That's the most tricky part because that's where all the pressure, that's where the whole reaction happens.
Yeah, and you really have to, you know, the thing about 3D printing is like it can be structurally weak because everything is printed in a layer, right? You're printing at a 0.1 or 0.2 millimeter layer. Yeah. Right. And at any given point, if you use enough pressure, you can peel the layer apart. Right? Yeah. So until they figure out how to actually fuse it so the layers can't be peeled apart, then that's where you then have the opportunity to build something like that. And even then, you know, to me, it's still like, man, I don't know if I would ever trust it. You know, it's going to be a long time before I would even think about that. And I'll probably just watch someone else do it if they say they can, and away we'll go. But yeah, no, they're incredible. I love them.
Oh, it's amazing. And the thing that blows my mind, I know it might sound simple to most folks, but to me, it's amazing. Something that seems so complex, you could print it. Because this was done in a single print, right? You didn't have to put anything together. It just printed, and yet it moves.
Yeah, it's called print in place. So anytime you build a complex object that doesn't have to be built, it's just print in place. So yeah, it prints the wheel, it prints the center bearing, it prints the little, you know, kind of star balls around the edges, and you just pick it up and play with it.
And it has that perfect little slope inside, so it is amazing. You can print it without having to assemble it. That, to me, that's one of the most fascinating things with 3D printing. I have a couple friends who are really into it, and the fact they could all be done without having to really assemble it. Yeah. And like the tolerances are, I mean, it's just incredible. And even something,
you know, for you as like a small business owner, you could print these things in like whatever your favorite color is. You could put your T logo on it.
Exactly.
You know, so it's a promotional item. You know, they're really starting, you know, the only drawback to most printing today is that it's kind of single color like this, but you know, the Prusa printers that I like, you know, they have this thing called an MMU. It's a multi-color filament changer. It'll change up to 5 colors into your print, so you can actually start getting up to 5 colors, even 5 materials in the same print.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so that's going to be kind of my next project. I don't have that yet, but that's on my radar. But yeah, and you think about it, it's like if I want to go and print the little gears as orange and the outside is black, or if I want to do a layered technique, you know, if you go look at a lot of the 3D printed stuff that actually has that, you know, it's like I can build, you know, maybe little figurines or action figures, you know, whatever toys you want, and have up to 5 colors, you know, which is kind of cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then I think you were telling me earlier, you like to do a little fencing too?
I used to do saber fencing. You
really?
know, a lot of people don't even barely know what that is. But
so what is that?
Yeah, so everybody's probably seen it. Most probably in different types of movies where they're fencing. But there's actually 3 different types of fencing weapons. There's an épée, there's a foil, and there's a saber. Right, so the épée and the foil are kind of stabbing weapons. So each on
that's a cliche one you see in films. Yep. Like what was it with James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, and his Die Another Day?
Yep.
Yeah, where he went against guy.
So almost all the time that's going to be épée because it's all white.
Yep, exactly.
They don't have the silver stuff, which is electrical in nature, right? It can transmit signals. So it's almost always épée because it's kind of the simplest one to portray. But they're stabbing weapons, right? So they have little tiny buttons on the end of those, so it actually triggers a response if you hit the person.
Yeah.
So the difference between the foil and the épée is the entire body's the target. You can literally stab somebody in the toe for a point.
Oh, really?
Where the foil, if you look at how the equipment that they wear, you'll see that the body has basically silver, where you can be electrically touched. So it's meant to be more like you have to pierce a vital organ is kind of the concept behind it. So you have to hit them in, the abdomen somewhere to score the point. Well, saber is completely different. It's a cutting and slashing weapon.
Is it quite literally? It looks like a traditional saber.
Yeah. It's got the little.
Because I remember with the one we were just talking about, it almost looks like a little toothpick. Like it's a very straight line.
They're all very skinny. It doesn't have a thick blade on it because it's, the tip on it is the second fastest thing in Olympic sports next to a bullet.
No way.
So hundreds of miles an hour for a Olympic saber fencer, the tip speed of it. So it's incredibly fast. The people are incredibly athletic. So how I got started with this thing, I live over in Rockwall, and we went to this place called the Rise, the Rockwall Indoor Sports Academy, or Sports Expo at the time. It was this old cattle shed converted into an athletic facility. They've got a couple soccer fields, basketball, volleyball. In the back, they do gymnastics. My daughter used to do gymnastics there. Well, one summer, they actually had this fencing club in the back. My son at the time, he discovered this thing just through an open house, and he started doing it. And I watched him do it for like 3 months. I'm like, man, that looks really fun. So I just started trying it. I just kept going at it. And, after a couple of years of, going through saber fencing and a lot of time doing it, and I was able to go to one of the national meets in one of the over 40 things. I always kind of chuckle because it's like they create this special grouping of people for old guys like me. Yeah. Right. So it's like I'm just one of the faster old guys is all it equates to. But I won a national medal.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
I tied for a third place. Place. So it's a cool medal I have. It's just, it's more of an achievement, right? It's like, what are your goals? What do you want to get to? And that was something I always wanted to do. So I'm pretty proud of that one. I don't really fence anymore just because my kids have moved up and on their way, and they kind of do it. So it feels a little weird because all the fencing clubs in the area, they're just full of younger kids, kind of like middle school age mostly. So it just kind of feels weird being a guy going and whipping on a bunch of children.
Right. That's awesome.
But it's a ton of fun. If anybody's fenced, they know what I'm talking about. It's a ton of fun. If you have the opportunity to even try it, just try it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I might have to add that to my bucket list. It's one of those things where I've never thought about it, but now that you mention it, like you see it in the movies all the time, it'd be so cool to give it a go.
Yeah, it is really fun. And some of them are easier to get started. The footwork, you don't really appreciate how good the footwork is of highly skilled fencers. They're incredibly athletic people, especially with saber. It's such a fast thing because the points can literally last 2 seconds.
Really?
Where epee, it's more of a strategy, back and forth, wait for the right opening. Saber, a lot of times you're just like, boom, you're right at the guy, and 2 seconds later the point's decided.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, me being not young anymore, just understanding, the speed of some of these people's capabilities is really eye opening.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I miss it.
Now, and what's the future look like for Chad? You said you're taking a little peek at cybersecurity.
I have, I got a little bit of time, I'm not up here anymore. So just kind of looking for the right opportunity. I actually started taking cybersecurity classes up at Collin. I got a little bit of time, and it's kind of the space I'm really most interested in just because it's such a fascinating topic, just not just from the technology and what it has and what it can deliver, but just, the industry as a whole. You see this entire ransomware thing, the way it's playing out. And, we talked about the MGM thing. It's just such a fascinating space because of all the back and forth. You plug one hole, the water stops coming in. All of a sudden, the rat chews the hole in the other side of the boat, and now water's coming in, right? So it's this constant ebb and flow of trying to stay ahead of these threat actors that are trying to infiltrate places, and to me, it's such a fascinating space because it's not just like one discipline or thing you're doing in it, right? There's so many different things you can do within the cybersecurity space, so that's why I'm interested in it, and that's where I kind of want to end up in my next role.
There's literally so many areas of cybersecurity. Yeah. It's never ending because we'll have new tools tomorrow, and there'll be new threat vectors tomorrow as companies expand. You have different areas.
Yeah, it's incredible. I watched there was a mini series that was basically about Google and their cybersecurity team. I think it was on Netflix or something, but they're talking about how they're red team hackers. They were trying to figure out how to infiltrate. Well, they decided they were going to put, I forget what it was. So somebody might call my bluff on this, but it was something like a teddy bear or something. They were putting a device in. They were trying to give it away as an internal prize to get somebody to plug this USB thing into their device. Yeah. And that was kind of the premise. Was this team was just trying to figure out a way for somebody to plug a USB drive into their system and compromise it. So, that just sounds like an incredible amount of fun to do something like that. As get to use, a lot of technology to do it and a lot of creativity. That's one thing I like working for smaller companies because they generally allow you to be a little bit more creative just because there's not so much, stuff that comes down from the top, right? So they rely on their employees to be creative to get the job done. And, by leveraging creativity, you get to do a lot of fun things, right? So that just sounds incredibly fun too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's astonishing. And it's a little disappointing every once in a while where my company will do a test and we're like, how much social engineering will they fall for this time? And it's so cliche, but it still works where it's like, hey, here's the break room. There's a couple of malicious USBs. Put it on the table. Yeah. And inevitably, more often than not, at least one will get plugged in and then bam.
Well, to me, the easiest one is you just go leave QR codes laying around.
Oh my gosh. Every time I see those at a restaurant, I'm like, God dang it. Like,
And you can make them look legit. Like take a 3D printer, you print a QR code on the front, you write Chili's on the back, and the official color, you set it on the desk. Who's going to say anything?
Exactly. And
malicious website.
And then just like talking about the cat and mouse thing a little earlier, now there are apps where it'll actually scan those to make sure they're not malicious, but people have to know about those tools. Yeah. And that, it's cliche to say, but knowledge is half the battle, or knowing is half the battle. A lot of people just don't know.
Yeah, it's incredible. So it's a fun space, yeah.
I always tell people, like, because that's a majority of what my company does. They founded it in 2017, focusing on networking and security. And there's just because I know kind of inevitably, not everything, but most things will end up going up to the cloud. But you always have to get to the cloud and connect there securely. It's one of those things where it's the Rubik's Cube of IT. There's so many things changing in cybersecurity, so many new tools coming out, so many new threats. Who would have thought? Nowadays, you actually have ransomware as a service. Yeah, you could pay a third party, and they'll do it all for you.
It's a legitimate business, right? Even though it's not the kind of business you want to be affiliated with, but there are legitimate businesses that
it's an illegitimate legitimate business.
Yeah, it's exactly it, and it's incredible. Talking about illegitimate businesses, we need to talk about Trayvon Diggs' ACL.
Who? I'm kidding. I'm assuming that's the sports balls.
It's a Cowboys. Before we log off for the air. Huge Cowboys fan.
I'm kidding. I know the business of the Cowboys.
Yes. So Trayvon Diggs, star cornerback, tore his ACL yesterday. So here I thought it was too good to be true, right? Here we are sitting here thinking the Cowboys are going to have this amazing year, and one of their best defensive players is done for the year, right? So,
jeez. I think I'm more impressed with Jerry Jones just building I believe the last valuation was $4.2 billion.
It's probably over double that now. I think, it's kind of crazy to think about. You see these valuations and the Washington Commanders. It's hard to say that word. Yeah. You think about, I forget what their valuation was, $4 billion, something like that. And they come out and they sell for like $6 or $7 billion. If the Cowboys actually hit the street, I can't imagine what.
It would be probably 10 plus.
To me, it's like 15.
The marketing is brilliant. It's America's team. Yeah. And I still can't believe Jerry didn't just buy Tom Brady. Yeah. It's basically a guaranteed Super Bowl. I know that much about the sports balls.
Yeah. No, it's fun. I follow him. It's been a long time since we've done anything relevant, I suppose. Yeah. 20 plus years.
I was going to say.
Who's counting?
I was going to say, I always see the cliche meme on the social media where they have this might date us too. Yeah. A picture of something called a floppy disk. Yeah. And on the little inscription it says, Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl pictures.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's funny. But yeah, here we are.
Oh, I was gonna say this. I'm sure they have a couple backups, and there's always next season too.
After 20 years though, you're tired of saying next season, and this is probably the most promising
lineup
2-game start we've had in a long time, and their roster is really, really talented, and you just hate to see where they finally have the talent and hopefully the coaching to go with it to make some noise, and it starts chopping dominoes down.
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of cliche, but timing is half of everything in life. You never know.
It is, yeah. So we're hopeful. We'll see how it goes, and maybe our next time we meet together, we'll be celebrating a championship or something.
You never know. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, bud. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, so much for taking the time to listen. Don't forget, Topping Talks is also on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and more. Also, don't forget to take the time to like, subscribe, comment. Don't forget to also tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your family, tell anyone, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe. Have a great day. Topping Talks.